Alright, now the next image that I'm going to be working on is an image called road.jpg, and he's inside your Chapter 8 folder as well, which is of course inside your project files folder on your desktop. Go ahead and open him up. Now, I could try and color correct this guy with variations, that would be fine, or I could try and use some of my auto commands, which we just talked about, that would be fine as well. As a matter of fact, a good color correction workflow to consider would be to start with your auto commands, and if they don't really cut the mustard, then you could try out our next command here, which is a command called levels. Now, this is where color correction starts getting a little bit more interesting. So, I'll head up to my image menu and down to adjustments, and the second guy in there, levels. Go ahead and choose him. Now, the Levels dialog box contains what's called a histogram in the dead center. What's a histogram? A histogram is a graph representing all of the color inside your image. We have the dark areas over on the left-hand side, we have the light areas over on the right-hand side, and all the other colors fall in between. So in my histogram here, I can see there's a bump over towards the right in my lights, and then there's a massive spike just off the center point in my image, and there's really nothing happening down toward the dark side of my histogram. This scale that runs across the bottom of the histogram is a scale that starts at 0 way over on the left-hand side and goes all the way up to 255. So that means we have 256 levels of brightness in each of our channels inside this image. And by the way, the height of these lines inside the histogram, that represents the number of pixels at that brightness value. So I can see there isn't much in the brightness value towards the right side of the center point, but again, there's that giant spike just off the center of the histogram. Now, let me show you something kind of cool here. I'm going to cancel out of levels just for a second, and I'm going to go up to my window menu, and I actually have a histogram palette. I'm going to open this guy up here. There's my histogram palette. And the histogram palette is actually showing 3 histograms, one for red, one for green, and one for blue. I look up on my title bar. Don't forget, I'm inside an RGB image. So I'm going to go to the histogram palette menu, and I'm going to go into expanded view. And up at the top here, I'm going to choose RGB. There's the same histogram that I just saw inside levels. As a matter of fact, I'll go back into my levels dialog box, image, adjustment, levels, or there's your keyboard shortcut if you like, Control L on the Windows side or Command L on the Mac. I'll pop this guy open, and there's the exact same histogram. Now, how is all of this going to work? Well, I can take the black arrow here inside the Levels dialog box and I can pull him towards the right. Now, what that does is sets all of the colors in the image from this point on the histogram all the way to the left to pure black. So in other words, the further I drag this towards the right, the darker the image is going to get. And that works as well for the white arrow that I see way over on the right-hand side. I can pull him down towards the left, and what that does is sets all the colors from this point on the histogram back all to pure white. Notice, of course, what's happening inside the histogram palette in the background. I'm actually remapping the colors inside my image. I'm pushing them either darker or lighter using either the white slider here or the black slider. Of course, I have the gray slider in the middle. He's known as the gamma slider. Getting into this is way beyond the scope of this series here. I'm going to make sure that he's set to about 1 there in the middle. And by the way, these little text boxes that I have down at the bottom, this guy right here relates to my black value. And this fellow way over here relates to my white value. So I can actually work numerically if I want on that scale of 256 values. Now, typically what you'd want to do is pull the white slider until he's just touching the edge of this histogram, maybe a little bit further in, and same with the black slider as well, something like this. This is sort of the basics to working with the levels command anyway, something like that. I'll just pull this guy out of the way so we can see a little bit more image. The other thing that I could do as well is up at the top of the dialog box, I can isolate individual channels. For example, if I want to isolate my greens and only work on my greens, for example, something like this. Or maybe I want to isolate my reds and only work on my reds, something like that. So you can certainly do that if you like. Or you can work on your composite channel. You can work on your entire image in one shot. That's perfectly fine as well. Now, what I'm going to do here is I want to reset my dialog box. I want to get rid of the settings that I've used here. So a neat way to do this, instead of canceling out of the dialog box and going all the way back into levels, I'm just going to hold down the Alt key here on the Windows side or Option on the Mac. And the cancel button inside the dialog box changes to a reset button. I'll click on him, and that takes me back to where I started. Yet another way that I can work inside my levels is I can use my eyedropper tools. So if I grab the black eyedropper tool, what I could do is I could click on the darkest point inside my image here, and what that would do is set that point as pure black inside the image. So maybe some of these trees over here would be a perfect example. I'll single click there. That sets those trees to pure black. And same with the white eyedropper tool. I would click on him, bring him back into the image, and I'm looking for a very light area in my image that I want to set to pure white. Maybe this pixel right here. I'll zoom back out and see what I have here. Now again, if you're not happy with your results, you can always hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and go and reset. Did you see what happened just there when I dragged my mouse over top of my image? I had the Alt key down and I can see what colors are actually getting clipped off by the effects that I've done by setting my black point and my white point. Anyway, I'm going to click on Reset here, and again, you can either use the eyedroppers or you can use your sliders, whatever you are comfortable with. So I may wind up doing something like this. Maybe I'll shift these center values here, something like that. Click on OK. That locks in the command. Now, it should be mentioned as well that using the commands underneath the adjustment submenu here, these are permanent changes. In other words, I've completely changed my image by using my levels here. Once I save and close out of the image, that is it. It's a done deal. So in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to non-destructively adjust your colors inside your images.